Welcome everyone to part 2 of my final 2018 NFL Draft Q&A. Again, I've had a lot of fun with these over the past few months. I'm thankful to all of you for submitting all these great questions that you've had. Let's close this bad boy out on a high note. Let's get started. Josh Grantham kicks us off by asking, are you okay with the Tennessee Titans going for quality over quantity in this draft? If it works out, then absolutely. Absolutely. You know, some people might want a machine gun and just spray all over the place and hope you connect at some point in time. Some people want to have a more precise, maybe even sniper rifle. And you don't have as many opportunities, but you feel like your aim is a little bit better. The better comparison I can make is this. First thing that jumps to mind, probably the 2016 Jacksonville Jaguars draft. If they only had 3 picks in that draft, but those 3 picks are Jalen Ramsey, Miles Jack, and Yannick Ngakoue, how do you grade that draft? It is an A+ all over the place. And if you don't give him an A+ for that, you are borderline. No, you're not borderline. You went full retard. You look at most teams in their draft, if you get 3 players that start, 3 players that really contribute, that's typically thought of as a good to very good, if not great draft, especially depending upon the level of contribution. If the Titans get Harold Landry, Rashaan Evans, and one other guy to contribute, then it was a really good draft. Even still, if Rashaan Evans becomes a stud inside and Harold Landry develops into an 8 to 10 sack guy outside, for a team that made it to the divisional round of the playoffs, picking 25th, that's still a pretty good draft. It just puts more pressure on those fewer guys to pan out. But I'm not inherently opposed to that philosophy. Sometimes quality over quantity is what matters. Cloud asks, is the 2019 draft more important to the Eagles than 2018? I think it clearly is. They were desperate to get out of that pick at 32. They got a 2019 second-round pick for the Ravens for the troubles, which certainly helps. I think you also look at it from the Eagles standpoint. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They've got Carson Wentz coming back from the knee injury. They've brought in guys like Haloti Ngata. They've brought in guys like Michael Bennett. They feel like they've got a nice veteran core that is back in a position to contend right now. So they didn't need as many young players to worry about. They didn't need as much young depth this year. Come next year, they probably will. Also factoring in that 2017 second-round pick, Sidney Jones, who for all intents and purposes was a first-round talent, but fell to them in round 2 because of the Achilles injury, will be back in 2018, which means that you could really view him as an addition in the 2018 draft class, not 2017. I can see why the 2018 draft class wasn't as important to the Eagles. And I still think they did some okay things, but yeah, 2019 probably will be more important, and I understand that. Sam Walker, character issues aside, would you rather have Roquan Smith or Reuben Foster? Roquan. I'd rather have Roquan. I thought his instincts were better. I liked him more. You also talked about Reuben Foster. You had a little bit more in the concerns in terms of durability than Roquan. So I would take Roquan. Ruben Moss. Was it a mistake for New England to not take Lamar Jackson at 31? It depends on a couple of things. Number one, if Isaiah Wynn and Sony Michel are year 1 starters and big-time contributors and the Patriots are back in the Super Bowl this year, which is what matters to them the most now in their win-now mode, then no, it wasn't. If the Patriots find their own future franchise quarterback in the next year or 2, then no, it didn't matter. If Part A doesn't happen or Part B especially doesn't happen and then Lamar Jackson goes on to be a star with the Baltimore Ravens, then yeah, it's probably going to look like a mistake, honestly. It's probably going to look like a mistake. Kane Gress asked your top 3 best undrafted free agents. Desmond Harrison, Holton Hill, those are certainly notable ones. And the third one I'll throw out there as a complete wild card, even though he's not like third in terms of my best players that weren't drafted. I really like the Michael Joseph kid from Dubuque. And I know there were questions about whether or not he could run on the outside, but he's got instincts, he's physical, he's got ball skills, he's got good size. To me, the Bears are smart. You think about converting him to safety. I like the raw canvas of talent that is Michael Joseph. Frederick Lohaus, the Giants' best value pick. I thought they had a solid draft, but I still think the best value pick was Will Hernandez in terms of you're talking about a guy that should have been a round 1 pick. You got him early round 2. He's going to be a day 1 starter inside, and it makes your Saquon pick better. It helps Eli Manning. To me, when you look at the entirety of the picture, that's ultimately the best pick that they had. Rob Lewis, thoughts on next year's quarterback class? Very, very early thought. What is not as good as this class, but I have watched so little of this year's class that I hate to formulate a full opinion yet. Some guys with some upside that I can see people really starting to like, and other guys that I think are massively overrated. But again, very early in the process. D.B. Cooper, thoughts on the Jags taking Tanner Lee? Can he beat out Blake Bortles? Yes, you've got this creepy Tanner Lee nut-hugging fetish, apparently, on Twitter, and I don't understand why. The dude has size, and the dude has an arm, but was he any good? At that point in time in the draft, you're gambling on the size and the arm upside. Why not? Nothing wrong with that. Can he beat out Blake Bortles? Let's pump the brakes just a little bit, okay? Peter Jedra, thoughts on the Broncos not drafting a quarterback? When I look at the early part of their draft and the players that they were able to come away with, it's really hard for me to knock them not taking a quarterback early. And maybe they just didn't like the quarterbacks in this draft. And maybe they weren't 100% ready to fully give up on Paxton Lynch yet, a guy they just took in the first round 2 years ago. Maybe they have some confidence in Case Keenum. I don't think it was a must-do for the Broncos to draft a quarterback here, especially if they didn't feel like it was right. And they may feel that they're closer to being back in the mix than other people do. So I'm okay with it. Smoke Queed asked, thoughts on the Raiders stealing Mo Hurst? If the heart issue is a non-factor, then Maurice Hurst in the 5th round was a crime. At that point in time, you have to take the gamble, you have to take the chance. You just hope someday that he doesn't have a Hank Gathers type of situation happen on the field, because then that will be an absolute complete disaster. But again, in the 5th round, that was a steal. Even though I wasn't as high on Maurice Hurst as others, a steal is still a steal, and he was a damn big steal in round 5 regardless. Tristan, the best draft trade you saw and the worst one. Easily for me, the worst one I still feel like is the Saints going up from 27 to 14 to get a raw edge rusher, giving up a future first-round pick. Doesn't seem like the most logical thing to do if you feel like you're one player away. Best draft trade that I saw, probably the Bucks going down from 7 to 12 and picking up 2 second-round picks to do so. That was a really damn good deal for them. Allowed them to get MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis. They took a dude that I had a top 10 grade on in Vita Vea. Even though I would have taken Derwin James, or I would have taken maybe a Tremaine Edmonds, it's really, really hard to knock them for Vita Vea in the grand scheme of things. He's going to help Gerald McCoy significantly, and he's going to help their run defense exponentially. So looking at the entirety of it, I love that trade for the Bucks from 7 to 12. How much different would the draft look if the Browns took Saquon Barkley number 1? That is a great question. What happens if the Browns take Saquon number 1? At that point in time, here's what I think would have happened potentially. Saquon goes 1. Bradley Chubb then probably goes number 2. At 3, the Jets can pick anybody. I'll still believe that they were probably going to take Sam Darnold. Although it would be really interesting if both Sam and Baker were there, would they have taken him? At pick 4, now Cleveland would take Baker Mayfield. Pick 5, the Broncos probably pick Denzel Ward. And pick 6 is right back to the normal order of things. So it would have shaken up the top 5, but not much else after that, in my opinion. Eddie or no, EET info. Good God, Hooked on Phonics didn't work for me. With the free agent and draft additions, what jump will Trubisky make? Look, I'm trying to be very optimistic about this Bears season in 2018, but a lot of it is based off of projections and possibilities and maybes. It's a big deal you bring in James Daniels, but, I had some concerns about him coming out of Iowa, especially from a strength standpoint. It's great that you added Anthony Miller, there's no question, but if Allen Robinson has any injuries, a guy coming off of a torn ACL, then Anthony Miller's your number one. That might be a bit ambitious even in year one for that stud. Where's the edge rush going to come from? I'm still not 100% sold giggly tits on their offensive tackles. What are they going to get out of Shaheen in year two? There are still to me questions. What are we going to see out of Trubisky in year two? We can anticipate and believe he will be better, but how do we know? So a lot to yet be determined, but I think he could make a sizable jump in year two, yes. Stephen Hilton, did the Patriots get better or worse after the draft? I think they got better. Isaiah Wynn, Sony Michel. I even think about guys in the 6th round like Christian Sam and Braxton Berrios. They just strike me as Patriots type of players. I thought they got better in this draft. I really did. JT Evans, what are some teams that could be looking at quarterback in 2019? The Giants, the Broncos. I'm trying to run through my head who else potentially. The Dolphins. Maybe the Redskins. There could be a lot of teams that are still looking for it. But those would be some of the ones early on that jump out to me. Maybe teams like the Jaguars. Maybe teams like the Chargers. A1C TV, do you consider Austin Corbett a candidate to be an NFL left tackle? Perhaps, but there is a part of me, I can't lie, that thinks the Browns envision him as a starter long-term at center, and maybe they would replace J.C. Treader with him. I'm not really sure yet. I think he could. I think he's better on the inside than he is outside. Jake Richardson, chances Terrell Edmonds ends up a stud. Here's the thing. Dude has athleticism for days, but he wasn't a great player at Virginia Tech, and again, that's just the reality of what the film says. I think it's also important to note that in recent years, the Steelers have done a terrible job of evaluating the secondary. So what type of confidence can you really have that they're going to be able to coach the kid up, which again brings a more important question. If you can't coach them up, then get the guys they can just plug in and play that are ready. But with that athleticism, it's worth a gamble, and there's a chance, especially if they stick him at strong side and play to his athleticism, there's absolutely a chance that he can vastly outplay his draft position, or his draft grading, excuse me. But based off of the Steelers' history with the defensive back position in recent years, I don't believe they deserve much of the benefit of the doubt. If we're talking about wide receiver, different story entirely. Sergio Parapans, with no relevant offensive line picks, what will Rashad Petty be able to do? Hey, look, I think Jamarco Jones could potentially start. So there's that. You're going to like Rashad Penny. You're going to like Rashad Penny. He can do a lot. Don't ask him to block a ton. But he's a good ball carrier. And he definitely filled a need for the Seahawks. Barry McCockner. Did the Colts get effective pieces to transition to the 4-3? For what their version of the 4-3 probably is going to be, I think so. When you talk about guys like Darius Leonard and guys like Kamoko Toure, I like some of what they did. Now, I thought Leonard was a big reach in round 2 personally, but again, that's one of those things based off of the grading and rating of the player. Was he a big reach? Yes. Does he still have a chance to play up to that draft position? Absolutely. Another Colts question. Vols fan asked, did the Colts fix their offensive line problems? Well, you would certainly hope with drafting Quentin Nelson 6 and then Braden Smith in round 2 that you have fixed your offensive line problems. And the simple truth of the matter is, if Ryan Kelly is healthy and Quentin Nelson's playing on one side, potentially Braden Smith playing on the other side, and maybe you're flipping Muhort out to right tackle to compete with Joe Haig out there, I do feel like the Colts have finally addressed their offensive line. I really do. Mark Mazurek, who do you think will be a steal of the draft? Who will be a steal of the draft? If he becomes a franchise quarterback, Lamar Jackson will absolutely be a raging steal, and we'll be talking about it for generations. I think easy money initially, to me, is on Tremaine Edmonds, who went 16 to Buffalo, Derwin James, who went 17 to the Chargers. Other steals could be guys, interior linemen, like Austin Corbett, Will Hernandez, James Daniels, Anthony Miller, Christian Kirk for the Cardinals. There's a lot of these guys that I feel like could potentially be steals. Kieran Chase, how did my Ravens do in Ozzy's last draft as general manager? Well, if you checked out my biggest winners and losers video, I thought they were one of the biggest winners. I ended up liking the entirety of what they did. I know there was a lot of what about taking a 25-year-old tight end and Hayden Hurst in round 1, but to me, Hurst was the best tight end in this draft. I completely get that selection. And the fact is they were able to trade back from 16 to 22 and then to 25 to be able to do so. Then to be able to get Lamar at pick 32. On 3, getting Orlando Brown, who I feel like is a future starter at right tackle in the league. Mark Andrews, who I feel like is a really good complementary number 2 tight end, the Dennis Pitta, if you will, to Hayden Hurst, Todd Heap. I like their draft. Jaleel Scott and Jordan Lastly. I get a sense that one of them is going to be able to pan out. I thought it was a good draft. It was one of the better Ravens drafts I remember in some time, honestly. Nice way to close out your reign as GM. And then Chase Oliver asked this question to close us out. 3 teams who got better and 3 teams who didn't. Honestly, there's more than 3 teams that got better, and probably more than 3 teams who didn't. But Chase, to appease to your ego, I do think the Chargers got better. With Derwin James and Nwosu, especially when I look at day 3, getting Kazir White and Quisenberry, I liked what they did in this draft. So I feel like, especially just Derwin James alone, makes them better. Other teams that I thought got better, inherently, I do feel like the Cleveland Browns got better. They had a lot of picks, and a couple of them are bound to pan out. So I do think they got better, especially because it's a very easy thing to say, because they're not going 0-16 again in 2018. We can all, I think, agree on that and promise to that. So they got better. I also think the Giants got better. I mean, there are a lot of teams that got better. The Bears got better. A lot of teams got better. I think the Colts got better. So those would be the teams I look at, and I feel like they did get better. The Saints I look at as a team, I don't really know where they got a whole lot better. I really don't. That would probably be the most notable one to me. Because even other teams where I might not have liked their drafts, I look at the Raiders. They got a long-term punter in the Townsend kid. You got Mo Hurst. They probably got better in certain places. Yeah, probably the one I look at the most, I'm like, I just don't know where they got better, was probably the Saints. But that was the last question for the 2018 NFL Draft Q&A series. I will definitely be doing it again for the 2019 draft, that's for damn sure. And I'm sure you'll be getting these Q&A videos throughout the NFL season, just the regular Q&As, and I might do other Q&As in the meantime, who knows. But thanks again for all your questions over the past several months. It's been a blast. Make sure you check out all the other content on this channel now, damn you.